Uber CEO admits company can afford labor protections for drivers in recent fireside chat, telling investors that Uber can make any model work. Let's react. Hey everyone, my name is Chris and welcome to the RideShare Guy. Since the beginning of Uber, they have always had a business model that said keep drivers as independent contractors, keep costs as low as possible, and try to turn a profit for those who are the investors. As time has gone on, as Uber was aggressive in going to new markets, new parts of the world, they have also faced many different challenges when it came to, are drivers really independent contractors or are they something else and have been misclassified? California tried doing something with AB5 by saying there's a 3-part test to see if anybody is really an employee or an independent contractor, and then was defeated by Prop 22. Which provides some labor protections like a minimum earnings floor, healthcare stipend, and others. Then going across the pond into Europe, there has been court cases and rulings that had said that drivers are not independent contractors, that they are actually workers, and there are many different regulations that are happening when it comes to how Uber can operate. And because regulations like this go against Uber's core model when it came to keeping drivers as independent contractors, well, Uber's CEO in a fireside chat with bankers had to come out and say they can make any model work and the company can afford labor protections for drivers. Now, before we get into a couple of clips highlighting this fireside chat, what are your initial thoughts when you see something like this, where they say that they can provide labor protections and can make any model work? Comment your initial thoughts below. So the first clip I'm going to share with you is something he's talked about in other interviews, talking about this IC plus model, which is independent contractor status with labor protections. So here you go.
I think the good news from our standpoint is that our delivery partners, whether they're couriers, drivers, etc., overwhelmingly want to be ICs. Everyone knows about the labor shortage all over the world. They can get a job if they want to get a job, but they want a job with flexibility, earnings opportunities with flexibility. And we have been quite willing to say we are championing the IC plus model. This looks a lot like the worker model as it relates in the UK, for example, where you retain flexibility, but then you have certain protections, whether they could be minimum earnings or they could be other benefits, pension benefits, etc.
So this is pretty much Prop 22 and also the way the regulations are when it comes to worker status in the EU and mostly like London, where these regulations have happened. And they say that this is going to be the model that they think is going to go forward and are championing this type of model, but they have to wait until regulations change that, which to me kind of seems a little counterintuitive, because if you want to take that initial step and kind of work towards it and be the champion of the gig economy when it comes to what workers and drivers want, then why wouldn't you try to change that model? Do you really need to wait until regulation is in place in order to make this happen? Or could you say, well, what works for Prop 22 in California can be applied to all states across the country unless regulation itself disallows it? And something like that would be a state-by-state basis when you're talking about the US. And then you'd have to go country by country when dealing with outside the US.
I think that model in the end is going to win. And I think that dialogue with regulators will make that apparent on the ground. And this is a long process, multi-year process, where on the ground, you talk to regulators. And ultimately, it's about what couriers and drivers want, and couriers and drivers want flexibility.
And then for the drivers and delivery couriers and the shoppers and anybody in the gig economy, what would you like to see? Would you like to see this IC plus model come to you automatically, or would you want to see it wait until regulation? And would you be more willing to work on a platform that has an IC plus model versus what the platform currently is? Let us know. Now, what about employees? Because in certain parts of the world, well, drivers and couriers have to be employees. They have to deal with fleet. So that means they're employed by a fleet status, but not necessarily by Uber. So it's like this third party in between. And Spain is a prime example of that. So here's this clip right here.
I do think that to the extent that models flip over, let's say, to an employee model. So for example, in Spain, Spain has a fleet employment model where we work through fleet partners who employ drivers. We can still make that business work. Spain business is up, close to 40% on a year-on-year basis.
But let's tie it all together and let's see what Dara has to say when it comes to whether it would be an IC plus model, whether it's under its current provisions, or an employee-like model where drivers may have to become employees, or under a fleet, like a third party again, where they're going to be employed by the fleet party, and then Uber will work with that fleet directly.
So I think for us, the fight for IC plus, we can essentially, as an entity, we can make any model work. We really can, because our marketplace is incredibly flexible. There's a lot of demand for our technology, our service, our brand, our safety, our reliability. So any model can work economically for us. This is about what our drivers want and what couriers want, and they want flexibility. So we would very much prefer it because they prefer it. But ultimately, even with Spain, we've proven that a fleet employment model works. And it not only works, it grows, and it grows at margins that are close to our long-term margins. But what's common is they want and need flexibility as it relates to earning, and gig work has that benefit. Earnings are really, really good now. And if countries believe that we should also include benefits like Prop 22 benefits, we're willing to lean in there, because ultimately it will attract more drivers and couriers to gig work, which we think is a good thing.
So as you can see, they can make it work in any model, in any way, and still look to try to become profitable. Well, let's just bring it back. It's going to be profitable. They're going to make it work because there is such a demand, and it's going to come down to probably raising costs on the consumer basis. So if you're looking at rides, it's going to cost more because they're going to have to pay more expenses, and they still want to keep profits. So yeah, they're going to have to raise prices. And that has already shown in London, where drivers have to being classified as workers instead of independent contractors, but not employees. And so they do have to raise prices there. If you want to have more drivers, why, again, wouldn't you have that IC plus model already all over the place? Why do you have to wait for regulation to strong arm you into making changes? That's the one question I've had for a long time, and I've never really understood why they weren't able to make those changes. So why wouldn't a company want to come out and say, hey, this is the type of model we're going to have, and we're just going to do it? We don't need to wait for somebody to come in and make the change. We're just going to do it as a company because, one, it's the right thing to do. It's going to make it's going to make the workers much happier, and you're going to be on the platform more. And if you're having a better time as a person or an individual who's working, that can spill out into the customer, because the customer then will see that happiness and like the platform as well better. I don't know. That's just my thought, but I don't run these companies, so it's just me talking. But again, I want to know, what are your thoughts when it comes down to what Dara had said when it came to being able to make any model work and being able to afford labor protections when it comes to a model like an IC Plus or even employee ship fleet model that some areas have to follow. Comment below with your thoughts. In any event, over the next several years, there are going to be more changes and more things that are happening within the gig economy, not just Uber, Lyft, or RideShare, but also food delivery and package delivery and shopping. As new companies are coming and emerging, as old companies are growing, there's a lot of changes that are going to happen in the gig economy. And because the gig economy is so new with these platforms and with so many people looking to partake within the gig economy for earnings, it's going to be a multi-year process no matter what, to try to figure out what is going to be beneficial for the worker for the amount of work that they put in. And we'll be here to cover exactly how it's going to affect you as a driver, as a delivery driver, a courier, as a shopper, whatever it might be within the gig economy. We'll be here to let you know. So make sure you subscribe and ring the bell for notifications so you'll be notified when new videos do come out. And if you think Uber or any of these other companies should go to an IC Plus model similar to Prop 22 or something similar, well, give the video a thumbs up and even comment your thoughts of what you think the changes should be in the comments below. All right, everyone, drive safe.